Hello and welcome to BirdNoise, an Eagles fan-made podcast. Today, I will be predicting the Week 13 NFL games, starting with Thursday Night Football. Thursday Night Football has Seattle and Dallas. Both of these teams played on Thanksgiving, so they both have a week's rest before they played on Thursday Night Football again, which is good because that is less likely to produce injuries, which we have seen this year. A lot of players are getting injured on Thursday Night Football coming off of that short week. Seattle looked bad against the 49ers on Thanksgiving. It is the 49ers, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. The 49ers are one of the best teams in the NFC, and they're hard to stop. When they're healthy, they are unbeaten. Those 3 games that they lost, they weren't healthy. They were missing pieces, and so when they're healthy, they are a bad team to go against. The offense for Seattle just could not get going against the 49ers. They didn't even score a touchdown all game. The defense scored on a pick six. But the defense was missing tackles left and right. The Seahawks were down 24-3 at half. It was just a mess. On the other side of the ball, you've got the Cowboys coming off of a commanding win against the 49ers. It was a close game against... Dang. We're going to have to cut that bit out. The Cowboys... No. And the Seahawks are facing the Cowboys on the other side of the ball. Cowboys coming off a commanding win against the Commanders. And they've been beating up bad teams all year. And that's not to say that the Commanders are a bad team. The Commanders are a feisty team, so they'll stay in the game. The Eagles have gone into overtime against the Commanders this year, and they've had a very near loss against the Commanders early in the season. But don't take it as a surprise that the Cowboys stomped on the Commanders. This game was close for 3 quarters, but the Cowboys are just a team that's going to wear you down. You've gotta put them away early if you're going to put them away, or else they'll come back and get you. And it showed. They scored 25 points in the 4th quarter. The defense for the Cowboys is kind of struggling. They gave up 300 yards to Sam Howell. And this game does have playoff implications, or it might, if the Cowboys lose a few more games, which they could. They have a tough bit coming up in their schedule. Right now, the Seahawks are the 6th seed. Cowboys are the 5th seed. The Cowboys need the win to stay as close as they can to the Eagles for that division and for the 1st seed in the playoffs. But the Seahawks have to show up against the Cowboys, or else this is not going to be a close game. I am going to pick the Seahawks to win this game, but I don't feel confident about it. But I refuse to pick the Cowboys to win the game. Next up, you have the Colts versus the Titans. AFC South matchup. It's not much of a matchup. Earlier in the year, people thought that this could be one of the top fights in the AFC South, trying to figure out who's going to make it in the playoffs, who's not going to make it in the playoffs. Right now, Levis is the guy. If they need to go and get a guy in this draft, and really they are just looking forward to the draft right now. They're kind of out of the playoff race, and Colts win. Next up, you have the Los Angeles Chargers versus the New England Patriots. Meanwhile, you have the New England Patriots, and good gosh, that game on Sunday against the Giants, no one expected much, but golly, did we not get what we expected. Game. Final score, New York 10, Patriots 7. Mac Jones got benched for Bailey Zappi again. Mac Jones throwing a couple of picks. The Patriots are in shambles right now. This is beyond what anybody who hated the Patriots dynasty for 20 years would have thought. Would have thought the Patriots turned into just 3 years after Tom Brady had left them, and they still have Bill Belichick. Like there are still the pieces of the dynasty there. It's just in shambles. So yeah, you have the Chargers who can't win a close game, and the Patriots who just can't do anything. And yeah, the Chargers are going to win this game. It's going to be bad, though. I feel sorry for all of you Patriots fans and all of you Chargers fans who watch this game. Next up, you have the Detroit Lions taking on the New Orleans Saints. What was that, Detroit? Your fans now hate the moon. The Lions did not show up at all during the Green Bay Packers game, and it wasn't even close. The Packers dealt them a few quick knockout punches with the march down to score the touchdown, and then the turnovers that Detroit had, and the Packers capitalizing on those turnovers just ended that game before halftime even showed up. And it's hard to figure out which was worse, halftime or the Detroit Lions first half showing. It was bad. But the Lions are traveling down to the Bayou and taking on the Saints. And the Saints, they're struggling too. They had a rough loss to the Falcons last week. It's rough in New Orleans. They're trying to figure out if Derek Carr will continue to lead this football team, if Dennis Allen will continue to be the head coach. Yeah, since Drew Brees and Sean Payton left, it's been a rough time in New Orleans. And so they're trying to straighten things out, trying to keep up with Atlanta, who beat them last week, and just there's that division is such a dumpster fire. I mean, I remember a few years ago we had the NFC East was a dumpster fire, but this is a bad dumpster fire. So I'm obviously taking the Lions to win this game. They'll get a bounce back win and bite some kneecaps off. Next up, you have the Atlanta Falcons taking on the New York Jets. The Falcons coming off a big win against the New Orleans Saints, and yeah, they had Desmond Ridder out there. He looked good at times. There were times where he didn't look so good. But managed to get them to a win. They are now sitting atop the NFC South, and they could win that division. Like it's not a great division. Really, it's between Atlanta and I believe Tampa. Like the Saints, they're off and on and clicky, but yeah, I think it's between Atlanta and Tampa on who wins that division. But they're still trying. The Falcons trying to figure out, is Desmond Ridder the guy? Is Arthur Smith the guy? Do we need to look into getting a new quarterback, a new head coach? What do we need to do? They definitely need to keep using Bijan Robinson more because that helps their offense get going. On this one, I think they'll do it. They'll get the bounce back and maybe be able to stay afloat in the playoff hunt, but they're not going to be able to stay very long. The Jets are coming off of a tough loss on Black Friday in a game that made nobody want to watch another NFL game on Black Friday. Tim Boyle was started over Trevor Siemian. I have no idea why, but he got the start, and the offense was bad. The defense was the one bright spot on that game, but even they couldn't really do anything for the offense. You had the Hail Mary pick six at the end of the half, and that sums up the Jets season for the most part. But I do think that they can get a win against the Falcons. I think that their defense can do enough to win the game or at least keep them in it, while you have Atlanta with their offense that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. So yeah, New York wins this game. It's gonna be bad though. Next up, you have the Arizona Cardinals taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Cardinals, they showed up for the first drive, and then they didn't show up for the rest of the game. They lost a big blowout to the Los Angeles Rams, and yeah, it's bad in Cardinal land. They're trying to figure things out. They're trying to figure out if they want to keep Kyler Murray around, if they want to trade him off, if they need to go get a quarterback. And on the other side of the ball, you have Pittsburgh. You guys did it. You got 400 yards of offense. Matt Canada got fired last week. Steelers respond with a 400-yard offense game. Yeah, there were some clear problems that got sorted out with the play calling on the offensive side of the ball. And Pittsburgh is going to have to keep improving. They're going to have to follow up the 400-yard game. They're going to have to stay in this fight. They're trying to stay in the playoff hunt. They currently have a spot, but it's a tight race in the AFC, and anything could happen. So the Steelers need to win this game, and I believe they will. So they're taking on the Cardinals, and it's just not, their defense is going to be able to hold out against the Cardinals. Next up, you have the Miami Dolphins taking on the Washington Commanders. The Dolphins, they played on Black Friday. It wasn't pretty, but they played. They won against the New York Jets on Black Friday, and yeah, everybody wants to forget that game. Their offense looked good at times. They need to make sure they stay consistent and stay moving forward and keep improving. So they gotta figure some stuff out. They're taking on the Commanders, who they lost big time to the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, and it really does look like the Commanders will clean house at the end of the year, try and figure out who's going to be their head coach, who they're going to get in this draft, what they're going to do on the offseason to improve. And yeah, the Commanders fans, they're just looking forward to the offseason. Miami wins this game. The Broncos, coming off a big win against the Browns, they beat the Browns solidly. And that's one of the best defenses in the NFL. So the Broncos should not be taken lightly anymore. They have come a long way since they got 70 points laid on them by the Dolphins. Russell Wilson is doing what he can to help. Sean Payton knows that Russell Wilson is limited in his ability to help out. And he's using that knowledge to work around the Russell Wilson hindrance and win these football games. So he is quietly making sure that the Broncos win games. He came to the Broncos with that intention. And the low point of the season was definitely getting 70 dropped on them by the Dolphins, but they have improved ever since then. On the other side of the field, you've got the Houston Texans. They had they lost against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was a good game. The refs kind of screwed both of those teams up, and there were some really questionable calls by the officiating staff in that game. They're trying to avenge their loss to the Jaguars, stay in the hunt for that playoff spot, stay even with Indy for the 7th seed, stay close to Jacksonville for the division title. And yeah, they definitely have their guy in CJ Stroud. Don't get me wrong, he has played great football this year. But I think they're missing a few key pieces before they can consider themselves legitimate contenders. And so I think Denver wins this game. Next up, you have the Carolina Panthers versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Carolina, you guys are looking forward to the offseason. You guys fired Frank Reich this week. And they're looking forward to the offseason, figuring out who's going to be their head coach. If they want to get a quarterback, they really can't. They don't have a pick in the first round. They're kind of stuck with Bryce Young for the next few years. And so they just have to figure out what they're going to do for Bryce Young to try and improve his play and that team. And then you got Tampa Bay. They're just trying to stay in the fight. They've had a few tough losses, few close games. Baker Mayfield trying to lead that team to a division title, to the playoffs. It's rough for the Buccaneers right now, but I think they win this game. The Buccaneers lost a close game against the Colts last week, and I just think they have to win this game in order to stay in the playoff hunt. So I think that the Buccaneers win this game. Next up, you have the Cleveland Browns versus the LA Rams. The Browns, they lost Dorian Thompson-Robinson during the game against Denver, and they may have lost Myles Garrett for a little while. So they're kind of missing a few key pieces on offense and defense now. They went and signed Joe Flacco, so maybe he can help keep them headed in the right direction, but it's a toss-up with the Browns now. I think it's going to be a tough stretch for them to see if they can make the playoffs or if they just barely miss out, which would be sad because they have the best defense in the NFL, and it's it's not going to be an easy game for the Rams to win. Meanwhile, on the other side of the field, you have the Rams. They just blew out the Cardinals last week in a decisive victory, and they're looking okay. They're looking okay. They got some pieces. I don't know if they have enough pieces to win this game, and going up against this defense, even though the defense is missing a few pieces, and the Browns might be playing without Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Due to the loss of pieces for the Cleveland Browns on defense, on offense, I think that the Rams will be able to win this game. It may not be as decisive as the Rams' victory against the Cardinals, but I think the Rams will win this game. Next up, you have the matchup that everybody's looking forward to this week, and that's the San Francisco 49ers versus the Philadelphia Eagles. The 49ers, they showed up on Thanksgiving night. They took the turkey with them. Came in, stole the turkey, started giving it out to their fans. I mean, you gotta love the 49ers just because you gotta love the 49ers just because of how well they play football. They're undefeated when they're healthy. And the ball gets passed around to everybody. They're just fun to watch. You love watching Kittle play football. You love watching Deebo Samuel. You love Brock Purdy just slings the ball, gets it into places that not many people can get it into. And I don't know what every team has their growing pains. Those 3 games that the 49ers lost, definitely some growing pains for them. This San Francisco offense is just phenomenal. And this is the game that should have been the NFC Championship game if Brock Purdy doesn't get injured. But I also don't think that anybody was stopping the Eagles that last year. The Niners have to be at their top level if they are going to win this game against the Eagles. And speaking of the Eagles, you got them coming off of a tough win in overtime against Buffalo. And here's the thing about the Eagles. They're not putting teams away and just absolutely dominating them like they were last year. They are playing chippy, feisty football, and they are winning games. They've been outgained in 4 straight games. They have trailed at halftime against the Bills, the Commanders, and the Chiefs, and they have won all 3 of those games. That's just something that doesn't happen. You don't trail at halftime to Patrick Mahomes and then come back and win that game. You don't trail at halftime to Josh Allen and come back and win that game. And yes, there have been some very questionable calls by the referees during Eagles games, but those affect maybe 1 or 2 plays. Those affect 1 drive or another. Those questionable calls affect the 1 drive that those questionable calls are on. And yeah, the outcome may affect the outcome of that drive may affect the rest of the game, but you're gonna have questionable calls regardless of which team you are playing. Jalen Hurts just refuses to lose. He is on a mission, I believe, and I think this game will show us who is the top dog in the NFC. Is it the Eagles or is it the 49ers? The Eagles are going to have to play better in the first half if they are going to win this game. You cannot just play around with the 49ers. You have to be able to punch the 49ers in the mouth and keep punching. You can't lay off the punches for a minute and then keep punching. You have to continue to punch the 49ers in all 4 quarters of this game. I am going to pick the Eagles to win, but this is going to be a very, very close game. Next up, you have the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Green Bay Packers. The Chiefs came back from down 14 against the Raiders after the Raiders just stopped scoring points. The Chiefs, they're looking like themselves in some games. In other games, you're not sure who you're watching play football. They fell down 14-0 against the Raiders, but then they came roaring back, got the win, looked a little better, but you're still missing that it factor that you had against the other with other Chiefs teams in the past. And so people are still iffy on whether or not they'll get the top spot back from the Ravens or if they'll fall on the second seed. On the other side of the ball, you got the Packers. The Packers in a rebuild year, trying to stay afloat in the NFC playoff race. They beat the Lions handily on Thanksgiving, and now they're back home taking on the Chiefs. You don't know which Packers team is going to show up. Is it the good Packers team? Is it the bad Packers team? Is it the Packers team that doesn't do anything in the first half? Or is it the Packers team that just scores 21 points in the first quarter? You're not sure. So with that in mind, I have to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. They're just the more consistent football team, in my opinion. And so, yeah, Chiefs win. On Monday Night Football, you got the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Bengals, they're having a rough season. They started 0-3. They started to get, and then they got back in the playoff hunt, and then they lost Joe Burrow, and it's just going to go downhill from there. Jake Browning didn't look too bad against the Steelers. It's tough to ask a rookie quarterback to go against the Steelers' defense. The Steelers have a great defense year in, year out. So it's tough to ask a quarterback to go against that at any point in his career and perform admirably, especially when that quarterback is starting his first NFL game. On the other side of the ball, you got the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're coming off of a big win against the Houston Texans to sit alone atop their division. And they just need to win, be more consistent on the offensive side of the ball, and keep the turnovers down, and they shouldn't have a problem winning this game. If they keep the Bengals in the game, the Bengals might be able to find some sort of way to win this game, but I don't think that Jacksonville will let the Bengals into this game. And so, yeah, Jacksonville wins. Thank you for tuning in to BirdNoise. Leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Let me know what you think. They came...